Hello, this is Dead Hamster, and today we're going to go ahead and take a look at why the graphic issues have been happening in the Peach's Castle custom course that I've been making. So if you'll watch my earlier videos where we look at Peach's Castle, you'll notice some pretty serious graphical errors with the course. There's a lot of distorted polygons. I was finally able to track down why that's happening. I don't know exactly why it's happening, but I know why it's happening. I know what is happening, rather. I know what the game is doing, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that today. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So to do that, we're going to hop over here and take a look at the memory, the RAM, as the N64, my emulator, is running. So there's a specific address that we're going to be taking a look at, and you'll have to give me just a moment to find where that is. In the meantime, we'll pause that. Here we are. So this area of RAM, as you can see right now, just has a whole bunch of random numbers. It might be doing something, I'm sure it is, but it's not doing anything for me right now. What it is going to do in a little bit is be holding the data for segment 4, which is the vertices for my course, all the vert data. So we are going to slow this game right on down. Running at 9 frames, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. I'll keep it at 2. Might be a little too fast, but... Alright, and we're going to wait until the data loads, and then we're going to pause it. I'm going to slow it down now to 1 frame. So I do not want to miss this and have to do it over. There we go, frozen. So this is a little difficult to see, but what's important is that all my vert data is loaded perfectly. I tried to point with my hand, I can't do that. So we have the positions, the flags, the colors, everything is written perfectly on this frame. The data is loaded, all fantastic. Now, for the next frame, what was that? Oh my goodness, what is this? Why, it looks like the game just wrote a compressed MIO file just right in the middle of my vert data, the frame after that it loaded everything just fine. So if we go ahead and take a look at what file this is, it is not this. Don't look at that right now. It is this one. You'll have to give me a second or so. I hope it's not that one. I'm going to let that close real quick. No, it's definitely not that because that's empty. Where would I put that? I might have already deleted it. Ah, here we are. Yes, of course. This. So this is the, this is the last file in the texture list. So after all my textures get loaded, this is the very last one that the game loads. So what that tells me is that for some reason, and this is the compressed texture, not the uncompressed texture. So for some reason, the game has decided that this location right here is a perfect spot to copy my uncompressed texture data before it or rather my compressed texture data, before it uncompresses it and writes it to segment 5. Whatever calculation it does to determine the offset to begin the DMA copy function to load the data off of the cartridge into the RAM, that must use my assumption, this is my wild guess, is that it has the original size of the data like embedded into the equation, and it says, okay, at this pointer we know Mario's Raceway is this big, we want to put the data here, and because my data is not the same size as Mario's Raceway, it's now writing it in the middle of important segment data instead of in an area of RAM that would hopefully, I imagine, go unused in a normal course. What's interesting is if I load up Mario's Raceway, the unmodded version of this course, it doesn't unpack the data here. It unpacks it at a completely different address. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it doesn't unpack it at the same address, so that's not hard-coded. It does take something to do with the segment data into account. My guess is that it takes the position of the segment data, but it assumes the size. I don't know that. I don't have a decompilation where I could look at the source code, but that's what I assume is happening. So a couple interesting ways to fix this. The problem, first and foremost, is I don't know for any other course where this is going to happen. It's going to be some random part of the segment data. It's going to be some part of the data that doesn't matter. For Mushroom Valley, I did not notice this happening and this being an issue. So it says to me that it's not going to be the same area, it's not going to be the same position, and for some courses it may impact it in one way and some courses another. The best solution that I have right now, which is the best hack workaround I have right now, is after the game has loaded and everything is where it's supposed to be, I can use the positions that are stored in RAM of the segment data and just reload the segment data myself and do it with my own code. I can unpack it from the offsets that I already know and poke it in, or rather push it into the offsets that I get from the RAM of where the segment data is supposed to be. So after it writes this stupid MIO file and unpacks it and writes it to segment 5, which it needs to do in order for the course to load, it unfortunately needs to corrupt my segment data in order to load the textures. So after it does that, reloading the rest of the segments, so that and doing that manually outside in the expansion pack RAM where nothing else is loaded, so that I can reload the course data, and that should work for, I would imagine, 95% of the courses. The only issue is, what if something goes crazy wrong and instead of unpacking, or rather copying the texture into segment data, it copies it into something else that's important, like an assembly instruction or stats for the racers. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong, basically. But we're going to hope that this is a good fix for now. The ideal solution would be to find the assembly instructions that are calculating this offset and to change them to, again, push into the expansion pack so that it would copy off of the cartridge into expansion pack RAM and then write to segment 5, which would not interfere with anything that already exists. But unfortunately, I don't have the ability to do that quite yet. One thing that I do know for certain, though, is this area here. Let's see. Yep. So this is the address that the data just got copied to. This is the RAM, or the ROM, rather, the cartridge address of where the data got copied from, and this is the size of the data that was copied. My guess is that this address here, which is 8014F0A8, is used by the game's DMA Copy function when it processes course data. It doesn't seem to use it all the time. It does it when the game first starts. So again, you're doing a whole lot of DMA copying when the game first loads to load everything off of the cartridge, and then it does it when it loads a course. Going through the menus, it doesn't. So I don't think that it uses this for everything, but I imagine that for a lot, it will use this area in RAM as the variables for the DMA function. So you have to pass 3 variables, the cartridge area, the RAM, and the length of data, and those three are right here in the proper order even, so they're not even scrambled up. It seems pretty obvious that this was intended. And if I were to go back, and it was a little too fast there, unfortunately, but what you'll see if I slow it down is this value here is about to flash on just about every frame. So once it starts actually loading the segment data, processes a whole bunch of textures and other data, segments and structures that it needs to load off of the cartridge, puts them into RAM, and again, I believe it's using those offsets as the variables. So big takeaways from this: figured out what's going on, what the graphical glitches are, why we're having those weird warping polygons. Figured out a solution 100% guaranteed for Peach's Castle, and potentially for, I'm guesstimating, wild guess, I don't know what it would be, but I imagine most courses aren't going to run into the issues that I guessed it earlier. So I'm going to say that this is going to be a decent enough solution for the time being, until hopefully we can figure out a better way to handle this later on. But hopefully in the next day or two I'll have a video of Peach's Castle without any type of graphical corruption, and we'll move forward from there on the other things we need to figure out. So in the meantime, if you want to be sure not to miss that video coming up, go ahead and hit the subscribe link that's coming up. On the OverKart channel, I cover a whole lot of different modding that goes on in the Mario Kart 64 community, a lot of new things that are being done outside just of custom courses. There's a lot of other interesting things that we're working on as well. And it's a great way to keep up with the progress of myself and others in the community and the things that we're handling. So thank you guys so much for all your interest and for continuing to watch through and comment and post about the courses. It really helps to show that there's people out there that are interested besides myself in the things that are happening and getting done. So again, thank you guys so much for that. I appreciate the time you spent to watch today as well, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.